Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and we work on Django apps in this stream. And tonight we're going to work on some UX polish. So stick around and we're going to get into that, get into some issues on the Django app that I've got going. If you want to check out more about this stream, you can check out the description information below on both Twitch and YouTube, and it's got a bunch of links in there that are helpful. And if you're coming at this from YouTube, please like, subscribe, and leave a comments and let me know how I'm doing. That would be greatly appreciated. You can follow me on Patreon as well as if you want to support me, and that's patreon.com/mblehman. And I want to shout out to my patrons of Rupert, Abdulaziz, Patrick, Eric, and Philip. So let's get into what we're going to work on today. As a reminder, you're welcome to ask me anything about Python, Django, or web development. That's what I'm here for. So please do. And I'm gonna make Stupak happy today because I switched my theme to a dark theme. So let's see if he shows up today in comments, because I have a feeling he might appreciate this. But that's not really here or there. What we need to do is focus on the actual issues that are with the app and what we need to change to advance this Django application. It's a homeschooling application if it's your first time joining in. And I have plenty of things to do with my customer, and so we're just going to tackle some of those and maybe think about some of the modeling for some of the other changes, because there's more to do there. So let's start off with maybe some softballs in this process here. And looking at this list, we've got some easy ones that we can pick off that my customer said she wants added to the site. So let's just start from the top, because I don't have any real preference, and ultimately, I think they all need to get done because they're all good feedback. So this first issue that we're going to try and tackle tonight is adding a button to a certain page. So it's some template changes that are on this particular page. And the feedback that I got was there's two views in this application about a student and their activities inside of a course. So the structure of the application is a school year and grade levels and courses, and students are enrolled and doing tasks from those courses. And there's two separate views, and that's some of the challenge. So let's fire up the site and see what it looks like so that you can have a good understanding of what I'm talking about, so you don't just have to listen to my words. Let's get something visual here. So I'm going to log in and do my test account. This is all on localhost. This is just test data. Nothing exciting here, but there's two views of that when it comes to courses, and one is a planning sort of view, and that comes from this school year page. And so you can see I've got this second grade, and it's got a bunch of data in here, and you can click on a course, and a course will show these buttons, and it'll show all of the tasks that are associated with the course. So the other view of this is one that is tailored to students. And the reason that it exists, the reason why I created it, is because you could have multiple students enrolled in a course in my application. So that means that the view is slightly different, because the tasks are the same between this course view and this other view for the student, in this case a student named Mark, but the content is a little different in how it's presented, and it's because it has to track the actual progress of the student. So this page is meant to be a lens into what does the student have left to do, which is why this planned completion title is here at the top. It projects out the dates of all the remaining activities so you can see when the school year would end. Okay, so that's the framing and the context. What we need to do is add what the customer requested. So you'll notice here on this student version of the page, there is an ability to add a task. However, my comment from my customer was she would like the ability to, just like on this page where there's this add new task button, she wants the same ability on this page over here. So that's the button that we need to add. So this is not like rocket science kind of changes. This is UX polish. And this is where, as a reminder to you, if you're developing your own application, user feedback is really critical, because you want to make your app as good as you can, but you don't you are not maybe not your customer base. It's possible that you're building an app for people that are like you, in which case you do have a good understanding of that. But in this scenario, my application, I'm not a homeschool teacher. This is not targeted at me. It's really targeted at my spouse, who happens to be my customer, and people like her. So I have to rely on her feedback to decide what's good for the app. Now, there's a danger to that, and I don't know if any of you are Simpsons fans, but there's this classic Simpsons episode where Homer finds his long-lost brother, I think it is, who is a car manufacturer or something like that, and works with his brother. Homer works with his brother to create a car, and it is just this horrid beast of features and stuff. So there's a balance, and I'm not saying that my spouse is Homer. She's much smarter than that. But you just need to, when you are considering your customer features, make sure you have a dialogue that it is appropriate change for your application, and you're not including knobs just because that's what your customer wants. In this case, though, I have no reason to disagree with her point of view. I think it's really a valid one. So we're going to add a task just like this other view, which will make this fairly similar in functionality. So let's do that. Let's bring up the files that are going to be relevant. So one of them is a student course template, and the other is the course detail template. And they're very similar in structure, and so that's where we're going to draw from. And I think that what we want to do, in fact, for this first version of this, I have no reason to treat this any differently than what I see here. So I'm going to take this entire paragraph that's here, and I'm going to bring it down to this area and put it in roughly the same area that I can see it positioned on the other one. And we're going to check if this is the same data. It is. It does. It looks like in the context the course is named the same. So the links that are here, if you look, actually we're done with that, I think. If you look at this template and you see the URLs that are in here, they also refer to the course. So by having the course in the context, I don't think we need to change anything, which is really nice. We're not going to be adding new resources or editing the course from this page. Neither of those makes sense to be here. So we can delete those actions. And I think that might be enough to get us what we need. Now, there will probably be maybe some need to polish this positioning wise, although look, I'm very consistent with the spacing, so I can actually like page between them. Now, curiously, I'm noticing that there's a tiny different amount of, like, if you keep your eye on this, and I don't know if the frame rate is good enough on the stream to catch this, but keep your eye on this side of the button between the two tabs. So here's the student version, here is the school year version, and you can see that this one is slightly bigger for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know that it matters either, though. So I'm not going to perhaps fret about that. We've got this new button here, and let's try it out. Let's see what it does. The way the new task button works by default is that it adds to the bottom of the course. So I would expect that by clicking this button at the top, we can come in here and click that button, and it should add it after this intensive practice 2B 129 to 132. So why did my customer want this in here? I think the real context was if she has a brand new course and comes straight to this student view of the course, this first page was actually empty. So perhaps there's something to be said that really, maybe what it really needs is an empty state. And I'll probably ask her about that later, because I do think that this button is a little bizarre to have there at some level, because there's always this option to add new tasks. And so if she really wanted to add a task at the bottom, she could click this button right here and add one. So this button, this little button in the bottom corner should be equivalent to this button at the top. And so it feels a bit redundant and I think it's trying to solve a slightly different problem. Especially if you think about it as well, is if the course has no tasks and she comes into this view, she probably wants more information than just a button, but I don't really know that for certain. So let's check it out, because this might be the full extent of this change, and we can check it off and move on. So it says add course task for Math 2, and we're going to give it a description of some new task, and I don't think we need to add any other information. We will click the add button and see where it takes us after this. I'm hoping it will bring us back to that page. Okay. So there's some other benefit we could do. So notice what happened in that flow is that we added a task on the student version of the page, and where we landed after the completion was the course version of the page. And, that's fine to some level in that it did the right thing. It created the new task. But from a flow level, that feels pretty strange. So let's come back over here and check if this handles the next task logic. And it seems like it does, so there's something else going on here. Because if you inspect this, you'll see, as I make a mess with my water, sorry, it's going to distract me if I leave it. You'll see that there is a next parameter that is getting the request path and doing a URL encode on it. So I would expect that if you clicked the add next task button, it would populate that next parameter. So let's return back to that student view, and we'll use Math 2 as our example throughout this to be a consistent experience. But that's where we're going to come from. And let's look at the URL. When I look at the URL, so something's up. Oh, because I'm looking at the wrong. No. What's going on here? Aha. There is some conditional state that is not going to be true. Okay. I see. So I had some extra fancy logic in here for if there was some last task in the context. I don't think that really matters this time. I think we just want to come back to this page, especially if it's for this condition where there just are no tasks. I just don't think it's going to be important. So let's delete this. And I don't think we need this previous task parameter anymore either. We're just going to have the next parameter, and we can get rid of, so this stuff at the end, this %23 task, that is some anchor logic to get to a specific task on the list. But again, this is going to be, you're clicking on the top button, so it doesn't need to bring you to a specific task, is my take on it. So now we've got this simplified version where it's taking the current path of the request, it's URL encoding it, and it's attaching it to the URL. So if we refresh the page and we review this time, there's no last task in the context. We remove that if conditional. And if you can see at the bottom in my URL bar, there is now a next that seems to return back to this spot. So let's try it again, and hopefully this will do the right thing. Do you come back to student course view? And we'll click add and see what happens. Great, it came back and there it is. Okay. So I think that is the requirement from that particular issue. This was not meant to be, this is kind of a warm-up, I guess, to any more complicated issues, because look at what this ended up being is, what is that? 2 HTML tags with a little bit of Django template code in there to make it right. So nothing outlandish. We're going to commit this change and say add, how do I phrase that? Add a new add button. Add a button to create a new task on the student course page. and that fixes number 298. And that fixes attribute, if you're not familiar with it, will auto-close the GitHub issue when I push up to the Git repository. So we can commit that. I don't suspect that's going to cause any test changes because it was just some template code, and I've mentioned in the past that I don't have a history of doing very extensive template testing. So as long as the template renders, that's usually fine for me. And as we saw, we were rendering it. So I can't imagine anything will break here, but I'll run that in the background as we return to this list. Okay, so this is going to be, let's get to what? This one here is more complicated and not going to be appropriate for the stream probably because I need to talk more with my spouse about it. I might explain what the modeling might be to y'all, but that's not really necessary right now. So let's jump to this next see progress for a task. One of the challenges with this view of these two pages that we were just discussing is they are quite similar. They're both about Math 2 in this case, so they're both about a particular course, but one has, as I mentioned, a specific slant towards students. And that is, oh good, that passed. And that can cause some confusion of if you might wonder like, why is one versus the other? And so I chatted with her about this because she said like, hey, sometimes it gets confusing, especially there's some flow issues where, like you saw when I didn't have that next link set up properly, it came back to the course page when it should have taken you somewhere else. So sometimes if those flow issues aren't worked out, you can land on a different page. So because of that, I think it makes sense to make these pages as distinguished as we can. And there are probably a couple of ways to do that. There aren't that many attributes on the actual grade level, or excuse me, the course model. So I'll open up the models file and look at it together. So there's not too much that I can visually add in terms of richness about the course itself. I guess we can, maybe. There's something to be said for that. But the real thing that we could do is add some ability to navigate to the users that are enrolled in a course, so that if she ends up on a course page and didn't mean to get there, or something is out of flow and wrong, and she was on the student version of the page, it'd be nice if we could just send her back, or send any customer back. I'm referring to her in terms of generalizing this. Looking ahead though, we might also be able to add some of these attributes to this course page. And the reason I'm thinking of doing that is so that you see them in this list here as something that you can understand of, oh, this is about the course. This is not about a student. This is clearly details about this course. And that might be enough of a visual distinction to make it clear that there's a difference between the two pages. Longer term, frankly, there is an argument to be said of maybe there's a blending of these two pages. Maybe there is a version of this in the future where I don't have a separate page, where it looks like a single course. That has certain challenges in terms of figuring out like if you had a course and you have multiple students in it, let's say you have twins and they're both in the same course. Let's say you have something that's common in my house is we have some courses that are shared between my son and my daughter. Even though they're in separate grade levels, an art class is combined. And so if you had a view that has the students as well, you'd have to find some way to represent that. And it might be okay. It might be just planned completion for Mark and planned completion for Faye as like two separate columns, but I'm not really sure. And it doesn't really scale either if you have many students in a single course. So I'm hesitant to combine these two views together. So we're going to keep them separate for now, and work with what we've got here. So let's focus on taking this, and this issue, you can see the title is See Progress For. And so I'll probably have something like, well, let's mock it up, shall we? Let's restart the server because I stopped it. And I'm going to show you what I do with other pieces of data that have information. So you can see here that there's like text that I leave above the buttons. So that's the style that I'm choosing. And we can go to our template and let's just put it in for now in the way that I think this would go. And in fact, let's get the exact same style from that school template because I think that's going to be a good starting point. So there's some hyperlinks here, and then there's this paragraph of text, a couple paragraphs, I guess. And one is an MB8. And yeah. So what can we say? Let's put it here. And this isn't going to work, or it might render, but it's going to be funky. So here's the, am I on the right file? Yep, we are. So it's going to put in some paragraphs here that will have some holes in the data, I think, or it won't render at all. I don't know which one. Nope, wrong template. Okay. This is the right stuff to take, but we want to delete that here, and we want to go to the course detail page and put it here. Okay, I think this is the right spot now. Let's try it again. All right, so I expected this. This is like this data that's here is not in context, so it's not going to show. But we have the right structure, I think. And I think we're going to need a single line for this. So it's fine to get rid of this first paragraph. All right. So what I want to do is essentially, if there are any students enrolled in this course, I want to change this paragraph so it says see progress for, and then for now I'll just say we'll do it like this, of put in something that won't have a link yet, but we're going to mock it up. And I guess we're going to need an href, or else it's not going to like that, I think. And maybe we'll end it with a period. Keep sentences. So this is what it would look like. And I think this is appropriate. It's pretty clear that's a hyperlink. These are not clickable. Let's like give it some, let's give it something more. Let's give it some hover text. Hover. The text here is gray 800, so we'll say text gray 600. Usually go a couple shades lighter when I'm hovering. And so now we've got, that's the wrong page. Now we've got this, and when we hover, it goes a little bit lighter. So it's clear that you can click that, and it doesn't go anywhere yet, but we will make that, we will connect that to the student's version of this. In order to make that connection, we're going to need two pieces of data. We're going to need the course, which we already have, and we'll need the student ID. So when we're rendering this view, we need to look for a couple pieces of data. We need to look for any students that are enrolled in the grade levels containing this course. So the structure for this modeling is such that a student is bound to a grade level, and they're bound to that grade level through an enrollment. That's something that's joining the two together. And you can see that the Math 2 here is part of second grade. So we need to look for enrollments for second grade and then display them here. So Mark, we can actually check this probably. We can see, come over here and see that Mark is enrolled in second grade. So that's how we know that that would be working. So that's something we're going to have to go to the course detail view for and add that data to the context. And we're going to say, we'll probably add it to the context as something like enrolled students. And then we can loop through the enrolled students and join them together with commas or something like that, and put in the hyperlinks. So that if you had multiple students in it, it would be like Mark, comma, Faye, something along those lines. Okay, let's do this. So in order to do this, we're going to need to work with the course detail view. Let's leave this template alone yet. We don't have the data yet, so it doesn't make sense to iterate on it. And we'd mess up the links if we try to do that. So I don't really want to break those tests in that way. So we can go to the course views and we can go to the course detail view. And here we are. The course detail view already does get some grade levels, and it already fetches a bunch of stuff. It looks like there might be some refactoring opportunities here as well. So there's not a lot in here. Man, I'm really struggling with water tonight. That's ridiculous. That's the second time. Clumsy. I'm usually not like this, y'all. Anyway, we need to come in here, and this is where we need to get this data. So if we get grade levels, then this is actually maybe not very hard. Water's really bothering me. We're going to get the grade levels, and we're going to have that in the context. It's going to be added here, and there's clearly a section that does some extra checking to get to add the school year to the context. So similarly, we're going to do this is tricky. No, it's not. Nope. It's already doing exactly what we want to do. Any enrolled students in either of those grade levels. Okay, so let's bring up our test case. So this is going to be in the test views for the course, and we can go down to the detail view. And what do we want to do? We want to have a test that has an enrolled student in it so that we can check that. And so let's write a new test. So we're going to say test enrolled students, and say the enrolled students of the course are in the context. Okay, so we can maybe pull from the happy path test that's up here. We've got a course and it's doing a get check 200. That's all good. So we can steal that chunk of code, and it's still going to do a get check 200. That's fine. And then at the bottom, we want to have a list in our context. So we want to assert that there's some context, and I'm going to assume that this is going to exist. So this is going to look like this first. Enrolled students, and then we want it to be maybe actually be a query set. So I'm gonna coerce this into a list, because query sets and lists don't compare, or don't compare without some coercion. And then we can say student and close it off. So, oh man, that is brutally bad. So I made this a dark theme per request of someone who is on the stream, and he, it was a fair critique that at this time of day when I stream, it's kind of rough to watch this when it's all white. problem is, I don't know about you, but it could be because I've got Flux on right now, but I can't actually even read this at all where it's doing some error highlighting. So I have some refinements to do on my theme if I'm going to continue with this. Okay, so that's just what's going on. Let's see, we need an enrollment though. We need an enrollment, and it's going to be an enrollment factory call, and we're going to pass it the grade level. So this is already wired together properly. Wow, that's really rough to watch. I might have to switch to white theme if this is, because I can barely see what my errors are, and I usually use my errors to help guide me. So this says enrollment factory in that peach, which is missing, so we need to bring that in. And that comes from the students section. So come down here and say from homeschool students dot tests dot factories import the enrollment factory. And that corrects this. And so now when we run this test, I fully expect that this is going to fail because, well, we haven't put that context in there. So it's first complaining like you don't have that in the context. So now I think we have our working test that will prove this is right. And we only want to include the enrolled students when there is a grade level. And we already have the grade levels because we've already filtered on that. So we need to get the students when, and so we need to, what are we going to do here? We're going to do, I'm thinking this through. I think this is going to, I'm going to get rid of this because I don't actually think it's going to be a query set in the end. So I think the thing we want here is the enrolled students. And that's going to be, we're going to do a list comprehension. And where we will say enrollment.student for enrollment in enrollment objects filter grade level in grade levels, and close the list comprehension. So we need the enrollment model in order to make this work. And so we'll say from homeschool dot students models import enrollment. Now there's a conscientious choice that I'm making here, and I'm coupling some of the model state from my students app to this course view, and that is, it's a choice, right? Like it's something that if I never wanted the courses to have any knowledge of students, then I could never do this. I could never bring the enrollment model into the equation. It just wouldn't work. But I do think that it's reasonable to say to have a course view that is able to display its students. So this coupling that I'm willing to take on. I'm going to try and take a drink and not make a big mess this time. Hey, look, I don't have a drinking problem. Okay, so I think that's the accurate test. And good, it passed. There's a flaw in this though. I actually put it in there by accident now, but it's still true, it's still a flaw. Look at how I'm accessing this. So I'm doing a for loop here. Now, maybe it's not a big flaw because you would probably not have many students enrolled if you're a family. So the worst this could get is if you had all your kids in the same enrolled in the same set of grade levels, which is possible, but even then it would be limited to what the biggest families would be like 10. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that because it's accessing student off the enrollment, and it's doing that in a for loop, every time it hits enrollment.student, it's going to query a new query to get the student. So to solve that, we come down to the enrollment filter and we say select related student. And what that'll do is it will prefetch the data in a single query, so that when you do this enrollment.student right here, it won't trigger a new database query each time. So this is a technique for solving what's referred to as the N+1 query bug problem. It's a bad performance problem that's really common in web applications. It's really common when you have ORMs like Django. Okay, so that should actually make this slightly faster. It did. It was about 1/10 of a second faster. I'm not benchmarking here, so I don't know if that's like consistent, but it seems, actually that was 0.86. Let's run it a few times just to check. 0.83, 0.83, 0.87. Okay, so we're getting about that. Let's try and take it off and just see what happens. 0.85. Okay, maybe it's not noticeable in these tests, but I'm going to run it a couple more times just to satisfy my curiosity. 0.93, 0.97. So I think it is, even in these tests, maybe barely noticeable. But if I was to come up here and make a bunch of enrollments, maybe actually we could do that. Let's just make a bunch. So I just added in, I don't know how many there, at least 13 is what can show up there. So if I run the test with the select related, well, it fails. Okay, let's comment out the assertions because that's going to slow down the test. It passes and it takes a second, okay? If we remove the select related, it passes. Well, okay, there goes my theory. This is why benchmarking is, you got to be careful with it. Oh, you know what it is? Nope, that's not right. I don't know. I don't know why it worked that way. Well, I can assure you that in a real application, if you are querying the database model by model each time, then I've seen many performance monitoring tools show how bad that becomes with performance. So you can take my word for it, even if I can't prove it in these tests with this little small amount of data. Okay, so we now have the enrolled students here. I'm trying to think of how, if I want to order by something, or because there's no ordering implied in this, so it's what it's going to do is pull this by ID, I think, which might be fine. But just to make it consistent, I think I'm going to add an order by, and we'll say student name, which is going to fail, I bet, because I don't think it's actually name. Really? That surprised me. Student models. Yeah, how did that work? There is no name attribute here. What the heck did it just do? I don't know. Maybe it just ignored it. Well, that was funky. Let's do order by first name. And I could write a test that would prove this, but I don't really feel like it. It's just a kind of a quality of life thing that'll be a nice little addition. Okay. Now we've got our passing test. Now let's run the whole file to make sure everything's passing for all of that view. And it is. So we can now, I think, return to our template, which was the course detail template. And now we can do this in a loop. And we're going to say, in fact, we're going to filter this out. We don't actually want to see that if there are no enrolled students, because it's going to be a mess. If it will look really weird to include this paragraph tag that says see progress for that has no values if there are no enrolled students. So we want to hide that within an if statement. And then we'll, on the inside here, say for enrolled, we'll just, who cares, we'll just say student. For student in enrolled students. And that highlighted to me that I messed this up. It's in plural. And we'll end this loop and bring this up here. And okay, so here's where we're going to need to do some actual template stuff. So we need to change this to a real URL. So let's delete that and change it to URL. And it is going, we want them to go to the student's course view, which I don't remember where that is. I don't, well, let me rephrase. I don't remember the name of that. Students course. Okay. Nothing, it's not rocket science here. Students course. And then we're going to pass in the student UUID as the first parameter, because that's what it expects. And then the course UUID as the second parameter. And that closes that off. And so that is now there for that loop. And then we need to change what I have listed here as mark. We want to change that to the student. I'm just going to say first name. I think that's probably fine. Let's take a look at that. It's not complete yet, but this is, let's take little baby steps to get there. And I hit refresh in the chat by accident. So now this is populated from actual data. So that's all good. So what's left? There's some polish here. If I had 2 students enrolled in this, and actually maybe there's an example of a course that does. So let's go back, and I think I made the science course for both of them. So it's going to, started to illustrate the problems. So looks like our ordering is doing the right thing because it's got Faye listed first and Mark second, but you're going to notice that there's 2 periods and no comma, and that's not great. So what should we do? Well, Django includes some special for loop variable that if you're inside of a for loop is available to you, and it's kind of a little data structure. So we want to say for this period at the end, we don't want to include that unless it's the last loop. So you can do if for loop, I think it's last is the attribute name. Then we'll have the period, and then we'll say end if. So that should fix that part of the problem. So now there's only 1 period, but it's at the end. The other thing that is probably what we want is maybe a comma. This is where, let me think about this. Actually, let's go look at the template tag stuff. Django template tag for loop. For loop. Okay, cool. So these are all the options that are available to us from the template tag system. You can see I just used last, that was fine. The question that I'm trying to figure out is how nice should I try and make this? You know, this is going to be something rare. So maybe it's sufficient to say, if you're not last, then do a comma. In fact, that's probably good enough. I don't want to get too fancy. I was thinking like, well, what if you wanted to do an Oxford comma and have an and, or have an or, and say like Mark or Faye or whatever. And I think that's getting too fancy. So let's just do it this way, where we say, if you're last, do a period. If you're not last, do a comma. See what that looks like. Refresh the page. Now we have a comma, and it's imperfect, but the majority case, I think, is that it will only show a single student anyway. So I think I'm comfortable with that. And so this now has the benefit, actually, let's click some of these links. So this took us to Science Mark, and actually this has some nice benefits of, it's improved the navigation flow. Previously, if you were, say we're on this page, the student-specific version of this page, and all these tasks are junk, pay no attention to them, it's just test data. But previously, if you clicked on Science, the only way you could get back to that Mark page was if you went, whoops, okay, I need to go back there. Now, if you click on Science, you can go right back to Mark, as we can do, I guess we can see here. Also, you can go to Faye and see the same thing. So that's actually kind of nice. It sort of ties it together. So I like that. Looking at it, I don't think there's anything else I really want to change about it. It's consistent with the styling. You can tab between these, and they have the same amount of vertical space between things, the same font and everything like that. So that feels actually pretty good to me. All right, so let's give this one last run through the test suite. I think everything should still be just fine, but just give it a sanity check. So while that's running, I'll talk about background themes and stuff. So I used to be a big fan of a dark theme. I used to run Ubuntu Linux, and Ubuntu had a nice scheme with, and I don't know if they still do this today on their terminal, but it was a very deep, rich, kind of dark purple tone that I found very pleasant to work with, and had appropriate themes that was well designed for dark. And as I set this up to work on dark themes for my Vim setup, I tried, let's see, I think I even have it still installed here. I tried Solarized 8 high. Nope. Did I get rid of it? Color scheme. So, really? Surely not. Maybe I got rid of it. Try it over here. Maybe it's not on that terminal. Color scheme. Really? Well, anyway, I tried the Solarized color scheme, and I tried some others, and I just didn't like them. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting old and curmudgeon-y. But what I've really grown to like, for whatever reason, is having red strings in my Python code. I don't know why that was the thing that I got hung up on, but it is. So as I was looking through themes, they just weren't really working for me. But if you're using Vim, it's actually pretty trivial to switch between themes. You can change it very easily. And maybe if the problem with my current theme, as I said, is the highlighting is really rough. So I might have to change themes if I'm going to stay on this dark path here. Okay, so let's look at what this test had for us. We added a test to check that there was the enrolled student in the context, and we already had the grade level, so it really amounted to a filter on this enrollment, checking for all the grade levels, and then we selected the students and ordered by that, and then pulled out all the students so that that's exactly what was in the context. And then over in their template, it was looping over that stuff to produce some links that took us there. So not too wild, good quality of life improvement, and a good change. And we'll say add enrolled students to course detail view, which fixes number 305. Great. I'm going to push that up so that it will clear up GitHub so we can look at this list a little bit more trimmed down. Get those two things that we already did. Okay. And so this milestone that I've created is really trying to capture the fact that this is the first time that my spouse is actually using SchoolDesk to do our school year for our home here in my household. And so what she's reporting on these items is usability problems. This is what the whole focus of this stream tonight is on usability problems and fixing them. And this is just an area where it's going to take polishing. In fact, I had I don't know if they're still using it. I have a beta user, someone in my local community, and he and his spouse are trying out SchoolDesk for their home. And I got some feedback from him, and he said that his spouse is the primary one running the homeschool for their family, and is not a heavy computer user, and she was having trouble with the navigation. And it sort of highlights that what may be natural to me as the person who implemented it is that's one issue. It may be natural to my spouse because she's been like seeing it evolve and getting in her head, but somebody who's brand new may be totally unclear. So I'm hoping to get some feedback from him about details about, well, this is what she found confusing, because that's the kind of information that's really gold that can really refine the product to make it something a lot more usable for a larger group of people. Every time I take down one of those rough edges and smooth it out, then that opens up the group of people who would be comfortable in the application. So that's why I'm focusing on this rather than jumping into all of these other things. All right, so what else is on here? As I said, this subjects one is a bigger modeling thing that's not really scoped out yet, so we're not going to focus on it. We've got these other two. This one was going to be potentially tricky. So, well, what else to do except run into it headlong? This had to do with deleting. When a task is deleted, she wants the page to come back to a specific spot. And this is tricky because the way the navigation works is it links to what? It links to when a lot of these pages are put together and you take an action and there's a next query string parameter in the URL. That next parameter is instructing certain views to say, okay, if that parameter exists, send me back to that page. When I wired those together, I could include certain identifiers so that, let's say I did an edit of a task. When she's in that flow, actually, I sometimes forget that I have the app in front of me and I can just show you all. The way that works is I can come to any of these tasks and I can say, on this page, for example, I can say edit form set task 2. And I can change it to 24 and say update. And now when it returns to that page, it should come right to that form set task. Now this is a bad example. Let's do a better one because this page is so small that the anchor text is not really showing the effect. Let's go back to that math class and I'll do it again. So this is where it's going to become evident because a lot of these courses have, some of them could have hundreds of tasks in them. So like if you go to imagine this flow, like you edit task 57 and you save it and it brings you back to the top. Well, shoot, now you have to go back to 57 and then you can proceed because maybe you're editing a cluster of tasks all at the same time. But by having this next parameter, I can come in here, I can click this, I can say, change number 3 to 34, and I can say update, and it should bring me back to task 57, and it does right there. Okay, so how does that work? What was the magic behind that? The magic is that if you look at the hover, and it might even, I don't know how well it'll show it. You can see it, yeah. So check out the bottom of the browser here. And there's that hash mark that says task-A7D5, blah, 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 a bunch of stuff, right? So that is the UUID of this task 57 here. The hash with that task name can be seen if we inspect this. There is a hidden anchor tag somewhere. There it is, right? Actually, it's not an anchor tag, it's just an ID. So I added this ID attribute to this div. And so when you click a URL and you include that hash in that URL, when it returns to this page, as the page loads, if the browser encounters that ID along with that hash, it will jump to that part of the page. So that's really convenient. Okay, that was a lot of setup. Why is this issue so tricky that I'm talking about? Well, we're talking about now deleting a task. And so if you delete a task, the ID naturally is gone. So it will not render. So what do we do? The only real course of action would be to render something or link to something nearby it. The natural thing that I can think to do would be to link to the task right above it, which is kind of tricky, because how do you do that in a for loop? You have to kind of remember your previous task, maybe, which you can do. It's just a little tricky. So it's something we'll have to, might require some fiddling in the view. I don't think that a template is good for this. Actually, maybe it is. Maybe there's something in here that we can actually use. What we would want is the ability to access the element that's in the list right before the one that we're currently processing. Because we want, so if it's a list of tasks, for example, we want to be able to say, go back one so that I can get the UUID of that one and put it with this delete link so I can pass that bit of information along. I don't know that that really exists. I'm going to spend about 10 seconds or 20 seconds here looking through these items and see if any of these jump out to me as something that we might be able to leverage. Otherwise, I think we have to do this kind of handling in the view, and I'll show you how. So I'm going to be silent for a minute because sometimes, as I've mentioned in past streams, reading and talking don't exactly work well with my brain. And if you're aware of the template tag to use, please give a shout in the chat room. I'm not seeing it. Yes, Faki, that's exactly the kind of thing I was thinking of. Is it'd have to be an iterator. So that requires modifying the view code, right? And that's totally okay. I'm fine with that. It's just I was wondering if Django would have some kind of ability with template tags as you're iterating through a for loop to say this is the item before. But yes, your strategy is accurate. That's probably roughly what I will do. Okay, well, I'm not saying anything. Let's go over to the view code and see what we can figure out. So we are, as a reminder, and actually this is trying to think of, is the delete only on, oh, this gets even trickier. So all right, so here's what she was requesting, I think, is, well, let's see what she said. Can I get a so there's a delete confirmation page. That's one item to observe here. Jump back to the anchored spot where the task I deleted used to be. So there's a flow implied in this statement that she's not really calling out necessarily, but we can see what that flow is. So let's say we've got these junk tasks on the bottom now. Let's say we want to delete this one. So the flow that she wants is, I want to go and I say, oops, I didn't actually want this task. So I click that task. Then I click delete. Then you get the course deletion page. Then I click that delete. And now it's back at the top. This is where she's saying that she wanted it to come basically back in line to the bottom. So it's actually passing, there's a couple of handoffs there. Yeah, that's a good idea. It might DOM traversal might be a good way to do it. I try and avoid JavaScript too much because I find that yeah, like you've observed there, clean, it does get in the way. It feels a little hacky sometimes, I guess, is my thought, and assumes that it requires a certain amount of coordination between what your client browser has, and some people turn off JavaScript. I mean, that's getting rarer and rarer these days, but they do turn it off. Okay. So let's go to I guess that also means that there are two places that this could even happen. So if she wants to have this delete thing come back to this view, this is one place, the course view, but it's also possible that she could want to delete a task from here as well. This also comes there. So both of them, in theory, could be the place that she wants to delete that. I don't think I'm going to solve both tonight, and because I don't want to run too long, and we might not even get through all of this, but hopefully this won't take too much time. So let's return to that course details view where we were, because it's the same view that we're going to impact, and the course tasks are here. That's the structure that is looped over in the template. And I'll bring up the detail template so we can see that loop. So this is the whole loop. It's filling out every row. And yeah, that's what it's doing. Okay. So trying to think of the way I want to build this. So as Faki has pointed out, and hopefully I'm getting your handle somewhat correct, you can build like an iterator, and that's one way to do this. Maybe an iterator, well, not an iterator method, because the problem is that the nice part about an iterator is it's like an iterator is meant to handle one item at a time, right? But if you're working from, if you need like you're kind of building a window that you're walking through with this. You need 2 items at a time, and the window slides as it goes over, so that gets a little bit sloppier. Can we do this with a counter? I'm gonna come up with like a crude loop that I'm probably not going to feel very good about, because it's not going to feel very Pythonic to me, frankly. But it might be close. So what I'm going to try and go for is a list of tuples that I'm going to assign to the course tasks. And the tuple will be, the first one will be the course task, and then the second one will be, I'll call it previous task or something like that. So we're going to, we'll start with, I could probably do this. Well, I'm not even gonna try to put it in a list comprehension. We're gonna do this as foolishly, maybe as we can possibly go, and then optimize. Okay, so we'll just say tasks, and In fact, I'm going to actually go one more, and we're going to move some stuff around, because that last task context, I don't want to mess with that logic. So this is okay for now. And you can see what it does is it's already doing the evaluation, forcing it to a list. And then we're putting on the last task. And I'm using that for some other functionality. So I don't want to touch that. So by separating that, that allows that logic to go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, maybe I'll call it task pairs. I don't know. We'll use that as the name for this moment. And we're going to enumerate. Is this the right strategy? Ah, shoot. Well, we'll do it one step at a time. So we've got our first course task, and we're going to say in course tasks, and then we're going to do task pairs. And I'm just trying to get the basic framing in first, so that I don't have to think about these silly mechanic parts, and we'll get the other bits in there in a moment. And we'll say none for now. So this none spot is where the previous task is going to go. And you can only start pulling the previous task if you have, if there is one, right? So you have to have at least a length more than one. So this will probably be the best way I'm thinking of doing this is to say enumerate. And enumerate gives you an index as the first item. Oh, geez. That's embarrassing. I've used enumerate so many times, but I'm blanking on the order. I think index is first, but let's just confirm. Yeah, index is first. Okay. So we want to say if the index is not equal to 0, because that would be the first item. Then, well, let's do this. Previous task equal none. And then if, we can do this in one line. Previous task is equal to the course tasks of index minus 1. And this is like dangerous stuff. I don't really like messing with indexes too much in Python. Python gives us these strong enumeration parameters or tools, which tells me that I'm probably not doing this in the most efficient way. But I'm okay with this approach for the moment. So hopefully you're following along with what I'm doing here. What's going on is I'm trying to, as it gets through the loop, so let's walk through this, a couple loop iterations to make this clear. And then I guess we need to change this to task pairs. So as this iterates through, the first loop through, it's going to be 0. So that's going to fall into this none part of this, because they're not going to match. So previous task will be none on the first iteration through the loop. And then we're appending a tuple of the task and previous task. So on the first loop, it's none. The next time through the loop, it'll be an index of 1. And so then when you do index and we decrement it by 1 to move it back, and because the index is not equal to 0, that's not going to roll over to the last one and do it, because if you do a negative 1, it'll give you the last task, which would be super weird. So it will populate previous task with an actual task, and then we'll have the task at index 1 and previous task at index 0 will be the second value here. So we'll get the pairs that we want. And we'll have these pairs that we can then iterate through in our template to say course task and previous task. And that way, when we are constructing the URL, we can pass that information along, I think. Yeah, this is gonna get tricky, because I'm just thinking about the 2 or 3 steps ahead where this is actually being passed. It's not going to be simple, which is making me wonder if this is even the right thing to do. So let me pause, because maybe this is the wrong thing to do. Maybe all of this. Sometimes you can just brute force through something, but if something is pushing back so hard, maybe it's a sign that there are better ways to tackle what I'm doing. And I'm trying to think of what that could be. I've thought through a couple of aspects of this in the future. One aspect is on this page, and this is common, you would see this in a lot of different applications, is instead of having this flow where you're clicking, whoops, wrong view, where you click through and you get this, you get a delete button, and then you get a confirmation page. Like, I did this all because that was the fast way to go. It was the fast way to create. I could make a Python view that did this, and that was all good. But I think that feels kind of wrong to me. Of if you're on one of these other pages and you want the ability to delete something, what is it you really want? You probably want the ability to delete it, like, right from that page, right? Like, I wouldn't want to have to click. I mean, how many clicks was that? That was a click here, and then finally a click here. And then just to come back to this same page in this same spot. That flow, not so great. What would be better? Might be to have another action icon here of an X button. An X button with some kind of UI pop-up that does the post request and does the actual deletion. And then this is where it would make sense to me to either refresh this page. Maybe we still need the previous. That might still be something there, but we wouldn't have to pass along data to view after view after view in order to wire it all together. So I think that means that I don't want to take this current solution any farther. This code is feeling nasty enough to me that it didn't feel like the right thing to do. Now, that doesn't mean there's not cleaner ways to do what I did anyway. As I was working through this implementation with enumerate, another solution came to mind of, you could probably do, what else could I have done? This is actually interesting. Maybe let's think about other ways that we could have implemented this. So we have our tasks list of course tasks. Another way that we could have done this, let's actually bring up a REPL. Now you can add lists together, right? I can say none plus 1 is now a list of none and 1. So in theory, not in theory, in reality, I could have done something like this. So if, say, course task, we're gonna synthesize this in a little sample. This isn't going to be real, but it's going to illustrate a different way that we maybe, and perhaps a more Pythonic way, to get the thing we were trying to get. The thing we were trying to get is the pairs and the pairs was the current task and the previous task. And I bet there's going to be some flaw in the strategy, but I want to try it. The thing that we want is what? I want to get, so that we're going to assume that we have 4 tasks to go from here. So those are current tasks. So the final output that we would want is the pairs would be something like, it would be a list of 1 and none. And then the second item would be 2 and 1, and 3 and 2, and 4 and 3. Okay? And everybody hopefully sees that and agrees with that definition, even though I missed a parenthesis. So those are the kind of the pairs that, if you could numerically sequence the stuff, what that would look like. Okay, so we have our pairs as course. I named it incorrectly. This is course tasks. So we've got 1 through 3, 4. The previous tasks, another way to represent this, we said that the previous task was going to be none. So we could say previous tasks are none, and then add that to a slice of course tasks from not including the first one. So from 1, and then 1 onward. Is that going to do it? So what's previous tasks now? It's none, 2, 3, and 4. Is that right? No. That's not what I want. Previous task is not 2, 3, and 4. Previous tasks is 1, 2, and 3. So this is not the right slice. So really we want everything from the beginning to exclude the last task. There it is. That's it. Okay, so now we've got previous tasks and course tasks. So to get them together, we would do a zip on course tasks and previous tasks. And if you've never encountered zip before, then what it does is, it's like, you think of it like a zipper, as a jacket zipper, where it will take two iterables and it will weave them together. Now, zip can be dangerous because it will work with mismatching list sizes in weird ways. But in this case, we get an iterable, a zip object. So let's assign it to, we'll say this is pairs. And then for pair in pairs, we will print the pairs, and we'll see if it matches. More zip objects. Okay. I'm pretty sure this is close to right, but I think it's Python 3 changes stuff. I think it used to be list. So this used to be, maybe let's break it out. Maybe it is as an actual zip. So let's destructure it and say course task and previous task in pairs, and then we'll do print course task and previous task. Oh, come on now. I think I might have exhausted it because I used the zip. This is the other challenge with iterators. Okay. But look what the outcome was. So we've got 1, none, 2, 1, 3, 2, and 4, 3. And that was basically a much nicer or a simpler version of this. So let's take this implementation and hide that for a minute. And then we'll say, let's re-implement this as is the zip of course tasks and previous tasks. Previous task doesn't exist yet, So previous tasks is going to be equal to, what did we say it was? It was the list of none plus the a slice from course tasks from the beginning to, up into and excluding the last element. And I forgot the S there. Man, I really got to change that theme. That is unworkable, that error stuff. So that nasty, okay, I'll let you be the judge, but I think it's nasty, but here's the difference. Now, this might be a little bit more like what's going on here. So this might merit a comment to say, like, we want to make pairs of tasks and previous tasks, but I think it reads a lot cleaner than this equivalent expression here. Well, it's not quite equivalent because, as we saw, the task pairs were zip objects, so you can only iterate over that once, and you got to deconstruct it. And so it's slightly different structurally, or with the Python objects that it builds, but the effect that you would have seen in the template would have been the same. Is that you could build it this way and get the pairings that you need. And yeah, this version, while workable, has some if logic, so it's got that's actually slowing it down quite a bit. That's happening every iteration through the loop, so that's could be happening hundreds of times, and then it's only needed on the first iteration of the loop. So this is not, I'm not really digging it. Anyway, that's sort of where I'm landing with this stuff. I think what I'm going to do is just get rid of those changes. I'm not really happy with them. I don't often do that on the stream. I don't give up work much, but I probably should give it up more to see, like, sometimes you have an idea and the idea just doesn't pan out. It doesn't mean you should just power through it, but you should give it some thought. I'm going to think on this, and I probably will come up with a solution that allows deletion from that actual page. I feel like that is really the right call, as there needs to be an extra action here that allows deletion from this view immediately, so that this person, the customer, never has to leave this page. I feel like that's the right thing to do. And what is that? So how can we do that? I think it's going to require essentially baby steps towards an API is one way to think about this. I don't know that I want to bring in something as heavy. Heavy is not the right word. I don't know if I'm ready for this project to use something like Django REST framework. I think that feels a bit overkill. So we can probably get away with making some delete views that are, well, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, I'm going to think on it. The Django REST framework, there's been a lot of people that have been asking for Django REST framework stuff anyway. So, and I'm very familiar with it at work, and I know that I can make a delete view API from a model in like 2 seconds flat. So that would not be so bad. And then what that would allow is that I could have an X here, and that would bring up some kind of warning UI to say, like, are you sure you want to delete it? And clicking that confirmation. Hey Code Alite, welcome. I'm wrapping up tonight. Sorry if you're just joining up, but I'm describing what I'm thinking about. So putting in an API and making a pop-up that provides the confirmation message, because I still don't want people to, like, casually, how bad would you feel if you wanted to move a task down and you click the X button and just something disappeared on you. So getting in pop-ups, getting in APIs, getting in some sort of dynamic updates on the site, these are all things that I think would be interesting to consider. It's maybe a little bit of JavaScript here, like what JavaScript tools am I thinking about for this? Yeah, there's a lot of thoughts that go into this. So I think that's probably I'll just have to stew on that. And then maybe next time, this is where we pick it up, figure out what decisions have I made. Maybe I'll be showing off something I might have done, although where my time seems to be going these days is I end up doing most of this project work on the stream. So yeah, that's sort of how I'm feeling. Hopefully y'all will come along for that ride and enjoy that kind of content. I will take this presentation from tonight about UX polish and put it up on YouTube. If you could do me a favor and give me a like or a subscribe or a comment on YouTube, and that would really help other people find this material. And if you're watching this on Twitch, which you all are, I have not put this video up yet, if you could follow me on Twitch, that would be awesome, if you've enjoyed watching this with me tonight. So I want to thank you for joining in, and sorry we didn't actually finish something off, but hopefully it teased something interesting in the future that you can benefit from. So thanks again for tuning in, and have a good night. Take care.